Prime Minister Mark Carney has delivered on that promised reset of Canadian-Chinese relations. He is positioning China as a major partner as Canada moves away from dependence on the United States. In Beijing this morning, the Prime Minister announced a new deal aiming to end Canada's trade war with China.
A major shift is quietly unfolding in the global energy map, and it is happening far from the Middle East. For decades, Canada oil industry was locked into a single direction, where nearly all of its crude exports flowed south into the US, creating one of the most tightly integrated energy relationships in the world. That system gave Washington influence, stability, and control over a key supply partner. But that system is now changing. And the trigger is not just economics, it is geopolitics. At the center of this shift is the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline, a project that has fundamentally changed Canada's position in the global oil market. By expanding capacity to nearly 900,000 barrels per day and connecting Alberta oil sands directly to the Pacific coast, the pipeline has opened a route that did not exist before. For the first time at scale, Canadian oil can move west, not just south. That one change has redefined Canada options. Before this expansion, Canada was effectively landlocked, where oil exports depended on pipelines running into US refineries, which meant pricing, demand, and access were largely controlled by American markets. Now, that limitation is weakening. Tankers leaving Canada West Coast are heading toward Asia, and the numbers are rising quickly. Exports to countries like China and India have surged, with some estimates showing Canadian crude shipments to China increasing by well over 100% in recent periods. At the same time, the pipeline itself is already operating near capacity, driven by strong global demand. And that demand is not random. It is being shaped by instability elsewhere. Tensions in the Middle East, especially involving Iran, are creating uncertainty around traditional supply routes. Asian economies that depend heavily on imported energy are now actively searching for more stable alternatives. Canadian oil transported over land and shipped across the Pacific offers exactly that. Reliable supply in an unpredictable market. That is where geopolitics begins to appear. Because as Canada gains new export flexibility, the US is facing a different reality. For years, American refiners benefited from discounted Canadian crude, secured through a system where Canada had very limited alternatives. That pricing advantage was not just economic, it was strategic. Now that advantage is slowly disappearing. At the same time, political tension between the two countries is increasing. Recent statements from Donald Trump have included threats of aggressive tariffs targeting Canada, especially if Ottawa expands trade cooperation with China. The message is clear: maintain alignment with the US or face economic consequences. But the timing of that pressure is critical, because it is happening exactly when Canada is gaining the ability to choose. That creates a strategic contradiction. Pressure works best when options are limited, but when a country has alternatives, pressure can produce the opposite effect. It can actually speed up diversification. And that appears to be exactly what is happening. Canada is not abandoning the US, as most of its oil exports still flow south. But the direction of growth is changing. The extra supply made possible by new infrastructure is increasingly moving toward Asia. That is where future expansion is heading. And that shift carries real consequences. Because energy flows are not just about supply. They are about influence. When a country controls where its resources go, it gains leverage. It can negotiate differently, balance relationships, and respond to pressure without giving in. For Canada, the Trans Mountain Expansion has created that flexibility. For the US, it introduces uncertainty, because a partner that once had limited options is now acting with greater independence. And for China, it opens a new opportunity, a stable source of oil from a politically reliable exporter outside the risks of the Middle East. This is how infrastructure becomes strategy. A pipeline is not just engineering. It is a tool that reshapes global relationships. And in this case, it is quietly redrawing the map of North American energy and shifting the balance of power in ways that are only beginning to unfold. What happens next depends on how far this shift is allowed to go and whether pressure from Washington slows it down or pushes it even further. Because the tariff threat itself carries risk. When the US signals extreme trade measures, including proposals as high as 100% tariffs, the goal is clear: to stop deeper economic ties between Canada and China. But in a system where supply chains and infrastructure are already evolving, that kind of pressure can lead to unexpected results. Instead of limiting Canada options, it may push Ottawa to use them more aggressively. And that is where the strategy starts to backfire. Canada energy sector works on long timelines. Projects like the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline are not built for short-term changes. They're designed to reshape trade patterns over decades. Once capacity exists, it creates momentum. Contracts are signed, shipping routes stabilize, and buyers adjust. Which means once diversification begins, it becomes very hard to reverse. That creates a structural shift. If Canadian oil continues flowing into Asian markets, especially toward China and India, those relationships grow stronger over time. Refineries adapt, logistics networks expand, and financial agreements follow. Step-by-step dependence begins to shift. For China, this is a strategic win. Beijing has long tried to diversify its energy imports away from unstable regions. Access to Canadian crude gives it a stable, long-term supply from a predictable partner. It reduces reliance on Middle Eastern routes where tensions can disrupt shipping through key choke points. In this way, Canada becomes part of a larger energy security strategy. And this goes beyond economics. Energy relationships often turn into deeper strategic ties. Trade leads to investment. Investment leads to cooperation. And over time, economic alignment can influence political decisions. That is why this shift is being closely watched. Because it is not just about oil moving across the Pacific. It is about influence. For the US, the challenge is more complex. American refiners will still depend heavily on Canadian crude because geography and infrastructure keep that connection strong. But pricing power could change. When Canada had limited options, US buyers benefited from lower prices. Now with alternative markets available, Canada has more negotiating strength. If demand in Asia stays strong, Canadian producers can redirect supply or demand better prices. That changes leverage. It does not break the US-Canada relationship, but it reshapes it. And in global energy markets, even small changes in leverage can have very large effects. Timing also matters. This shift is happening during a period of global instability. Conflicts affecting major oil-producing regions are increasing uncertainty. Supply chains are being reconsidered, and countries are focusing more on resilience than efficiency. In that kind of environment, reliable suppliers become extremely valuable. Canada fits that role. A stable political system, large resource base, and now expanded export capacity make it a key player in a changing energy world. But with opportunity comes risk. Stronger ties with China could create tension with the US, which remains Canada's biggest trading partner and closest ally. Balancing those relationships will require careful decisions. Moving too far in one direction could create problems in another. This is the balancing act now taking shape. On one side, there is economic opportunity and diversification. On the other side, there is alliance pressure and geopolitical alignment. And in the middle, there is infrastructure, making it all possible. Because in the end, this shift is not driven by speeches or headlines. It is driven by capacity. The ability to move oil west instead of south changes everything. It turns a fixed system into a flexible one. And flexible systems behave differently under pressure. They adjust. They redirect. They evolve. The real question is not whether Canada will keep exporting oil to the US. That will continue. The real question is how much future growth will go elsewhere. And what that means for global power, because once a country can choose its customers, the relationship changes. It becomes strategic. And today, strategy is everything.